Hello everyone, welcome to our today's yet another special webinar where we're going to talk about mastering the IELTS reading section. Before we dive into the session, I would quickly like to understand if my voice is audible. So if I'm audible, please type a yes in the chat box. Great. I see a lot of yes coming in. Thank you so much for your confirmation, guys. And as I see a lot of students are still joining the session, I would quickly like to help you understand and talk a little bit about Galvanize Global Education, who we are and what exactly we do. Well, as you could see, Galvanize Global Education is actually founded and managed by alumni from top universities like Stanford, Harvard, IIT Madras, and IIM Ahmedabad. And what we do help students for their test preparation, right from GRE, IELTS, TOEFL, SAT, to helping students, guiding with the right universities, helping them with their statement of purpose, letter of recommendations, visa, and many more such activities. So yes, Galvanize does help students for their bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degree out there. And not to forget, Galvanize is that you're back for your last minute assistance for various other activities out there. Well, as you could see, 65 plus countries have chosen Galvanize in their journey of higher education. And not only that, we have helped our students get placed across 1,000 plus universities across 18 plus countries out there. And I'm pretty sure today you would be seeing your dream destination on screen out there. And Galvanize would be really thrilled and excited to help you reach to your dream destination out there. Well, I won't take much of your time here, but I would quickly urge you to take a look at our Quora threads. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you are quite famous and quite active on Quora for various reasons out there. But I would request you to take a look at our Quora threads where students have shared their experience about being with Galvanize, right, for their test preparations or admission counseling out there. And not to forget, a lot of you might be using our mobile applications. If not, I would really urge you to take a look at our mobile applications and start using them, as they are quite easy, handy, gamified, and many more such fun activities wherein you could learn a lot of things at ease of your home out there. Well, this is something exciting that we have for you as you all are attending our today's IELTS webinar. We have something really exciting for IELTS, and you can avail Galvanize IELTS course at the rate that we have mentioned out here. But in case you would like to, go ahead and enroll with Galvanize, I would urge you to please wait till the end of the session so that we will be sharing the discount code on screen with you out there. Well, it's time for the first poll, where I would quickly like to understand what is the reason that you're taking the IELTS test. This will help us understand for this upcoming session out there. And I see a lot of you have been looking at study abroad. That's really amazing. So I'm pretty sure the session is going to be quite informative for you all out there. And with that, I would like to end my poll. Well, this is about your host for the day. We have with us Darshana, who's the verbal expert for IELTS at Galvanize Global Education, and a little bit about her, wherein she's done her BTech and she started a career at Infosys before, jumping to teaching out there. And she's got 3+ years of experience as a teacher at White Hat Junior and Byju's Future School out there. Post which she's been with Galvanize as a verbal expert. She has helped a number of people out there, crack their IELTS score out there for English. So we are very happy and thrilled to have her here. And before I ask our host to start with the session, we would also like to understand at what stage you are right now for your IELTS prep there. Okay, it's juggling between thinking to take a test, preparing for the test, already booked and already completed. Great. With that, I would like to end my poll and I would hand over my mic to our host for today's webinar. We have with us Darshana, and I would request her to start with the session out there.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Darshana, you're audible.
Right.
But I'm a little bit concerned about the video. Is it?
It's not visible?
No.
Okay. I have my video on though. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Now it works. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Ramya. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here today to guide you all on mastering the IELTS reading section, right? So just give me a minute before I quickly share my screen. Yes. Okay. So we are gathered here today to master the reading section specifically, right? So before we actually jump into the reading section, I'm just going to quickly give you a brief about the IELTS exam in general. Okay. Because an exam is like a battle, right? And if you know your enemy well and you know yourself, then you don't need to fear about the results, because if you are well learned, then you're going to do well, right? Okay, so what is the IELTS? IELTS is the International English Language Testing System, right? And what does this test? It tests the language proficiency, the English language proficiency of non-native speakers. Like in India, we have multiple languages, but English is not our most primary language, right? So if we want to move to an English-speaking country, then we will have to take the IELTS. Likewise, for all the other countries that want to move to a English-speaking country. Okay, so this test, the IELTS test, is managed by British Council, IDP, IELTS Australia, and the University of Cambridge. Right? Okay. And this score, your IELTS score, is accepted in over 10,000 institutions, and you can take the test in around 1,200 test centers over the world. Right? Okay. Now, every year, there are more than 3 million test takers, right? And the cost for the IELTS test is somewhere between $215 to $310 per attempt, which in INR comes up to 16,250, right? And there are two versions of the test, the computer-based test and the paper-based test. You can choose whichever you are comfortable between. Okay, and the IELTS gives out 48 fixed test dates every year, and they are conducted only on those dates. And your score is valid from the day you take the test, not from the day you receive your results. It is valid only from the day you take the test for 2 years. Okay, so what are you tested on? Your overall competency in English and your ability to communicate in an academic environment, right? So what do you mean by academic environment? Since most of you had voted that you are taking the IELTS to go study abroad, right? So, general communication, English for communication is different from English for academic, and English for professional is also different. There are 3 different categories, right? So academic is in terms of when you want to study materials written by different professors, who are from the English speaking countries. Then the way they use the language, their vocabulary is a little different and a little more advanced than what we have in India, right? Or other non-English native speaking countries, basically. So that is why this IELTS is compulsory when you want to enter to study or work in an English speaking country. Okay, so this test is divided into 4 sections: reading, speaking, listening, and writing. Today, we are going to be looking at the reading section, right? Now, the reading section lasts for 60 minutes. Okay, so you have 1 hour in which you have to answer 40 questions. Okay, so how are these 40 questions divided? You will have 3 different passages. 2 of your passages will have 13 questions and 1 passage will have 14 questions. The order might not be necessarily the same. For one test, you might have 14 questions in the first passage. For a different group of tests, you might have the 14 questions in the second or the third. Okay, so that order is not necessarily a given. It will be based on the passage. Okay, so what do you do here? You read a passage, answer the questions. Okay, and what does this test? It tests your ability to understand academic reading material written in English. Okay, because all your 3 passages are going to be academic passages. Okay, it's either going to be about something that has happened in a university or about a topic. It could be anything. It does not require you to have any external knowledge. Whatever you require to answer these 40 questions will be given to you in the passage. So you don't have to worry if it's a technical passage and you are from a non-technical background. You will not have a problem. All your answers will be given in the passage itself. you do not, even if you know something away from the passage or outside the passage, do not answer it. Answer it only based on the passage. Okay, this is a tip you need to remember, because most of the time what happens is when you know something too much about the topic, and as soon as you read it, we get a little excited and answer questions based on our own general knowledge. That is not to be done here. This is an English test, not a general knowledge or a technical test. So whatever is given, make sure your answers are based only on the text mentioned. Okay, we'll quickly look at the other sections as well. So your listening section lasts for 30 minutes. Here also you will be listening to audios and answering 40 questions. Your speaking session will be a live interactive session with an examiner. This will last for somewhere between 11 to 14 minutes. And you have 3 parts in this. If you all have attended the speaking IELTS speaking session that we had before, then you might be aware of the details about this. And then we come to the writing section where you have 60 minutes to write 2 essays. Okay, so moving on to the reading section. Okay, so why do we need the reading section? So like I mentioned, to ensure that you have the necessary skills to survive in an English-speaking academic atmosphere, right? And to test your ability to read academic level passages and books, okay? So here you need to understand the gist of the text, understand the relationship between the passage and accompanying elements. You need to capture details from the passage, understand the argument that is being made, recognize the writer's opinions and views. Okay, so now about this test, everything that you need to know, how many passages will you have? You will have 3 passages. Okay, your reading section will have 3 passages, and each passage is going to be about 800 words long. Okay, and the number of paragraphs will vary based on the type of passage that it is. Okay, some might just have 3 paragraphs, some might have 5 paragraphs, depending on the content. Okay, so how do you answer these questions? First, we understand the gist of the passage, understand the relationship between the passage and accompanying graphs, charts, or any maps. You could have all of these present in your reading. So you will have to learn how to read those as well in order to answer the questions. Okay, so you capture the details from the passage and establish a relationship between the passage and the given graph or table or whatever that is, a pictorial representation basically. Then you understand the logical argument and recognize the opinion and view. Okay, so how many questions will the reading section have? Okay, so you will have a total of 40 questions like I mentioned. Okay, so these 40 questions could be split as 13, 13, 14 or 14, 13, 13 or 13, 14, 13. There is no fixed pattern. It will vary. Okay, and how much time will you have for the reading section? You will have 1 hour, 60 minutes exactly. Okay, and if you are taking the paper-based test, you have to transfer your answers to your paper answer sheet within this time. You will not be given any extra time for transferring your answers to your exam sheet. Okay, so within the given time, you have to make sure you have completed it. Okay, anything else that you should know? So like I mentioned, you will have non-verbal materials like diagrams, graphs, illustrations, tables, charts, maps. It could be anything, right? So you will have to learn how to read this, understand this, and answer the questions based on this in relation with the passage. Sometimes the passage might have some contradicting information with respect to this. So you need to read the question very, very carefully, understand what the question is asking, establish a relationship with the data that is given in your passage, compare it with the pictorial representation, and then answer, right? Okay, so you may have to understand why these are present in the context of the given passage. Just don't blindly look at the pictorial representation and answer your question. Sometimes, it might not be the most accurate answer. You might have some more detail mentioned in the passage, which will help you answer it accurately. Okay, so always make sure you have read the passage thoroughly and you have read this also thoroughly, and then you make a good connection between those two to remember and give the right answers. Okay, Now, other things that you must be careful about, okay? So you will have to type or write your answers for some of the questions, right? So what do you do in this case? You should be really very careful about your grammar and spelling, because if you get these wrong, you're going to lose up marks for these, okay? Any grammatical mistake or a spelling error, you will not get marks for that question, even if your answer is right, okay? So you end up losing marks for any grammatical or typographical errors as well. Sometimes it's not even your mistake, but if you haven't checked your answer, you might end up losing marks, okay? So don't be in a hurry. Make sure you have answered it right. After you have typed the answer or marked the answer, please make sure you read it once before you move to the next question, just to make sure that what you have answered is at least right, okay? So out of the 13 questions, even if you have answered 10 correctly, it's a good thing, because you'll at least get 10 short points. But if in the hurry, you've answered all the 13, but out of which 5 or 6 have mistakes, then you end up losing 5 or 6 marks, and you end up only getting 6 or 7 or 8 marks, right? We don't want that to happen. So take your time to answer, but whatever you are answering, make sure it is right, okay? Now, how do you manage time? Okay, there's no negative marking. Even if you get an answer wrong, you get 0 for it. You don't get a -1 or a minus. There's no negative marking. So make sure you have answered all the questions. Okay, so maybe, first 10 questions, you're very, very careful in answering. 11, 12, and 13, maybe just in a hurry, you have just written something relevant, okay, because you have read the passage, you know that this might be the answer, so you write something relevant. Maybe your answer is right and you're lucky and you get the points, but at least 10 points are sure, because you have made sure you have double checked your answers, right? Okay, and every question carries equal weightage. So if you think a question is requiring too much of searching and too much of logical connections to make, just pause that for a while, move on to the next question that might be easier, finish all the easy questions once, make a note of the question that you have pending, come back to that question, okay? But this can be done only within one section, okay? So one passage and the question. Once you move to the next passage, you cannot return to your previous passage. So just be very, very careful about that. So if you want to, if you think you have enough time and you can manage, please finish that, then move to the next section, because once you move forward, you will not be able to come back. Okay, you can navigate within the section, which means you can just leave out the third one, move to the fourth, fifth, sixth answers, and come back to the third one. But you cannot move to the next passage and then come back to any question from the previous passage. I hope I'm clear here. Okay, and manage your time effectively. Okay, so we will see how the time management can be done in a later part of the session. Okay, now let's look at the different question types that you will come across in your reading section. Okay, so you will have multiple choice questions, right? So what are multiple choice questions? There is a passage, then there will be a question followed by 3 options. Now those 3 options could be true, false, or not given, yes, no, or not given, or multiple options from which you have to choose 1 or 2 or 3 correct answers based on what is mentioned in your question. Okay, so you have to read your question carefully. Undoubtedly, you have to do that. Only then you will be able to answer it the right way. Okay, so the task direction is extremely important. Okay, now we'll look at each of these sections in detail. Okay, so what do you do for a true, false, or not given question? Okay, so you will read the passage first. Okay, in any case, don't jump to the questions. First, read the entire passage. Okay, you can take about 7 to 10 minutes to read the passage. Okay, after you read the passage, you come to the first question. If your first question asks you this, do the following statements agree with the information given in the reading passage 1? Okay, and in the boxes, write true, false, or not given. And this is your first question. Okay, so when you read the question, you will verify this with your passage. If this statement is true according to the passage, you will write true. If the statement is the opposite of what is given in the passage, or incorrect information has been provided from the passage, then you will write false. But if the statement has some missing information that is not there in the passage at all, then you write not given. Okay, so this is for true, false, and not given. Similarly, for yes, no, and not given also, if the statement given agrees to what is in the passage, you write yes. If it disagrees, you write no. And if there is no logical connection, you write not given. Okay, if there is no mention of the given statement or a part of the given statement is missing and you're not able to spot that in your passage, if that information is not mentioned, you will write not given. Okay, and then choose the correct answer. You will pick the answer that is most relevant with the context in the passage. Okay, now so sometimes when you have to pick the best answers, you might have to pick like two answers. Okay, so it says right box, you have to pick two advantages that are mentioned, right? So in this case where you have to pick two, this means that you will have, out of the 8 options or the 7 options provided, 2 of these are the correct answers. So you have to pick both, and only when you pick both you get points or marks for that respective question. If you pick any one, you do not like, if one is right and one is wrong, you do not get marks for that answer. Okay, so when it says pick 2, you have to pick both correct options to get marks for that question. Okay, now before we move on to this next question type, do any of you have any doubts? All right, okay, so we'll move on to the next question type. Okay, so the next question type is for matching the information. So what do you do in matching the information? You have to pick the most relevant information given in column A and match it to the information in column B. Okay, so what you do here, you find details with respect to the particular information or idea conveyed. Okay, and you spot relationships and connections between the facts or given ideas. Okay, so here you have 4 questions and here you have 5 different options. Okay, so which means out of this, one of the option has to be eliminated completely and 4 of these will be correct answers. Okay, so you have to pick the correct answer and write it here. You will have a box to write your option. So in the box given here, you will mention your option. Okay, so this is how you will match. You will solve the match the following, match the information type of questions. Okay, next comes your short answer question. So this is a very tricky type of question because here your spellings and grammatical mistakes and all of that also matters, even if your answer is correct. Okay, so even if there is a small mistake in your answer, then it becomes incorrect. Right? Since this is an English test and not a knowledge-based test where it's enough for you to know the answer, it's also very, very essential that you put your answer the right way. Okay. So how do we answer short answer questions? You will have to complete those sentences. Okay. Or there would be some notes provided and there would be some missing blanks which you will fill. Okay. Or there might be a summary provided, where a part of the summary will be given or a question regarding the summary will be given and you will have to summarize the answer. Okay. Then you might also have flowchart completions where some parts of the flowchart will be missing. So you will have to read the passage, understand the information and fill it in the relevant places. Okay. So how do you do this? You have to identify specific information from the passage based on the sentence or the notes or the summary or the flowchart. Right, you have to understand this information and relate it to the visual representation. So you read the passage, connect it to the given form of question, understand the gist of the passage, understand the relationship between the passage and the accompanying elements, graphs or charts. Then you capture the details from the passage, pick up what is exactly relevant to this question, and then fill up your answer. Okay. Sometimes in your summary and notes, you might also be asked to understand, recognize the writer's opinions and views. So this, you will have to read the passage, understand why the author has written so and so, and use that as your answer in this case. Okay. So your short answer completion questions might look something like this. Okay. where you have to choose. So it says choose one word only from the passage. Okay. So in these kind of questions, you will spot this sentence in your passage. The sentence might not be exactly the same. It might be paraphrased in your passage, and it may appear a little different in the question. But you have to read the passage, read this statement in the passage, understand what it's saying, and fill it. Okay, so it says only one word. So this means in this kind of question, you will just have one word answers. Okay. So for all of these, only one word. Sometimes it might say two words. Sometimes it might say three words. Sometimes it might say a phrase. So based on what is asked here, you have to be very careful when you read your task direction and then answer the question. Okay, so this is like the flow chart that you have to complete. So you have to read the passage, identify and understand the information, and fill up the blanks accordingly. Okay, so it says no more than two words here. The task direction is very clearly stating no more than two words, which means these blanks can have one word or two words. Okay, this one or two can vary, but it cannot be more than two. So you cannot use 3 words, 4 words, or anything beyond. Okay, now let's get to the key points to note for your reading test. Okay, so what will the question look like? Okay, or do? The question tests your ability to retrieve particular details, which means you have to be very, very receptive when you read the passage to pick out important pieces of information that you will have to use in your answers. Okay, so you look for specific information that is directly stated. So these could be names of people or names of places, or it could be some important dates, all of that. So these are the direct information that will be present. Okay, so you look at these and you make inferences. You may maybe note it down in shorthand, or just take notes for yourself to understand and look at it later when you come to the questions. Okay, and you try to understand the relationship between two given statements and understand the logic there. Okay, and you have to arrive at a conclusion using the details that are given in the passage only. Do not use any prior knowledge of your own. This is only an English test and not a general knowledge test. Please remember that. A lot of times you might come across questions that are very familiar and you probably know the actual answer to it, but that answer might not be mentioned in your passage. So never use information that is not mentioned in the passage as your answer. You will not get points for that. Okay, so let's understand the overall idea. Okay, then you relate to what the passage or the paragraph essentially tries to convey, and you comprehend the functions or specific parts. So there might be a story in your passage, there might be a short story or something. So you comprehend that, understand what the story is trying to say and why that story is present in the first place. Okay, shows why the passage presents the given information. So you understand that. You also identify the tone in which the writer has written, or the opinion of why the author has written whatever he or she has written in the passage. Okay, so sometimes it could refer to an emotion, it could be an opinion based on a political topic or anything, or it could just be his attitude towards the idea that is presented in the passage. So you need to identify and understand why and how the writer has written this passage. Okay, now what type of text can you have? So these will be taken from various sources, such as it could be from any of your books, it could be from journals, magazines, newspapers. So you can also refer to all of these when you want to prepare for the test. Okay, so these topics will be of general interest. It will never be an in-depth topic of any of your technical subjects. It would be general so that even non-technical students can understand it, because technical might mean different for different fields that you are getting into, right? So it'll be a common subject that most of you can understand and interpret easily. Okay, as far as you understand academic English. Okay, so and the passage might be written in a variety of styles. So you might have one narrative passage, one descriptive, and one argumentative passage. Sometimes you might have all narrative. So there is no fixed way. It could appear in different styles. Okay, and of the three passages, one will definitely have a logical argument mentioned. Okay. Now, next, so it is important to get some varied reading practice by how do you prepare? You prepare with different kinds of academic and journalistic material. Okay, so some of the common sources that have very good academic level English that will help you prep for your IELTS, and moreover, not just for this test, but for you to survive very, very easily and successfully in an English speaking country is okay, so I'm just listing down a few sources that you can go through to improve your language skills. Okay, so you can go through BBC News, National Geographic, The Economist, History News Networks, SkyTech Daily, Wall Street Journal, Nature. So all of these, right? You can just take a screenshot of this if you want to for your reference. I'll just hold it for a few seconds. Right, okay. So what should you do when you see the passage? Okay, first, every passage is a story. Okay, so look at it as a story. Don't look at it as if you don't know what it is, because before you have appeared for the actual test, I'm pretty sure each of you might have solved at least 10 to 50 passages. 10 is the bare minimum that you would have solved before you enter your test. Okay, so don't get scared by looking at the passage. Don't worry too much. Just read the passage like it's a story. Try to understand what the passage is saying and understand it. Okay. Next. So when you have a passage, you will have an introduction, a story to it, and an end, right? Like basically, like every story, there will be like a beginning, middle, and end. Okay. So understand the sequence of events, how it started, what happened next, how it ended. Okay, so when you look at it this way, you will be able to understand it and remember it better, right? Also, you have to read smart. And by read smart, like usually they say read every word in your passage, right? So you read every word, but read it smartly. You don't have to make note of every word. You need to understand and differentiate between important information and background information. Right? So all the important information is what you have to keep note of actively, and all the background information, just let it be there. If it's asked in a question, you can always come back and look at it. Right? And headers and taglines are crucial pieces of information too. Yes, very, very important. Sometimes we miss out on reading the heading of the passage. We directly jump into the passage because we're running short of time. Right? So we don't want to do that. We don't have to hurry about anything. Make sure you read the heading and the taglines, because those might be game changers. Sometimes a heading might have more information than the passage is giving out, right? So in one line, you could you might probably be able to answer 1 or 2 questions easily. So make sure you have read the heading and all the taglines and anything that's mentioned in quotes or specifically mentioned separately. Okay, now for your IELTS test, some additional tips are to develop your vocabulary, right? So you need to actively read or listen to the sources that I mentioned in the earlier slides. So when we say develop your vocabulary, you need to know how to use a lot of words. Okay, for this, you don't need to open your dictionary and try to memorize highly complex words. But what you need to do is to understand at least a few important academic language words that you may have to use frequently in your academic setting in your universities abroad, right? So make sure you have a good hang of those words, and not just words, the right usage of that words is equally important. Sometimes we have seen that students use really fancy words in their essays, but it does not make sense with the context of the essay, right? So you don't want to do that. What we need to actually do is it's okay if you use 2 less fancier words That's completely fine. But if you use a word and you use it wrong, then it doesn't make sense at all. Right? Next, you break down sentences. So if you encounter long sentences, break it down into smaller chunks, right? Sometimes really big sentences can be difficult to understand, right? So to understand to understand the entire sentence might be really complex. So what you can do is break it down into 2 or 3 or 4 parts based on the length of the sentence. Try to understand part by part and then try to get a logical connection between all the 2, 3 or 4 parts. Right? So once you do that, you will try to understand better. You will be able to gauge the information better. Right? And it's a good idea to read with a timer. So when you are practicing for the test, what you can do is you can always just turn on your timer and try to read an 800 words long passage. Okay, you can also try reading a newspaper article that is approximately 800 words long. You don't really need to count, but just read it with a timer on, so you'll be able to understand. You know how much an 800 word long passage looks like, right? So when you look at a few practice essays, you will know that. So once you come across some certain articles that are approximately that length, turn on your timer and try to read it, understand it while you make notes. Okay, so do this whole process as it is. And when you do this, you will be able to understand that maybe in the beginning, an 800 words long passage might take you 15 minutes to read. But with practice, with more familiarity, you might be able to read a passage between 7 to 10 minutes. Okay, if you can do it within 7 minutes, great. But 10 minutes is the maximum that you should be taking to read an 800 word long passage. Okay, so this will help you improve your time management. Now, how can we tackle the IELTS reading section? Okay, so let's look at the strategy. So there are 2 steps in the reading strategy. Okay, so obviously, when you look at the passage, you know that there are 2 things that you will do. You will first read the passage, then you will answer the question, right? So how do you read the passage? Okay, so when you read the passage, make sure you do not take more than 10 minutes to read the passage. Like I mentioned earlier, 7 to 10 minutes is the average. If you can do it in 7 minutes or less than 7 minutes, great. But you should not take more than 10 minutes to read an 800 word long passage. Okay, now when you read the passage, obviously the passage is divided into multiple paragraphs, right? So for these paragraphs, try to understand using the what and why method. Now, what is this what and why method? I will be explaining to you in the following slide. Okay. Now, as you are reading the passage, make sure you note down names, years, places, all of that in your notes. Okay, in short forms or shorthand. Right, and come up with 1 line each, 1 line for every paragraph. Okay, for what is said and why it is said. Okay, so now we'll look at the what and why method. So what refers to the information that is being conveyed. Okay, so when you read a passage, you will be able to understand what the author is trying to say in this passage, or what is this paragraph about. Okay, so the gist of the central message conveyed in the particular text. This is what you have to understand. Okay. And why is why it has been said. Why has the author written it? What is the author's intention behind writing that paragraph? Okay, so every text has a purpose. It could be speech, conversation, taglines, ads, dialogues. Likewise for your RC passages. Okay, so every part, every paragraph, every sentence, every example, every story that is mentioned has a purpose. Okay, now let's try to understand this with an example. Okay, so consider this following information. So you have a ketchup bottle here. Okay, so can one of you on chat tell me what is this picture trying to convey? Tomatoes, right? It's made fully tomatoes with tomatoes. So this is a tomato ketchup, and they have used tomato slices. So they've cut up the bottle like tomato slices. so that you are able, so it looks like tomatoes. So they are trying to show us that this tomato sauce is the closest to tomatoes. So it's made with real tomatoes. It's filled with tomatoes. Okay. And the tagline below says, no one grows ketchup like hens. Okay. But can you grow ketchup? No, you can only grow tomatoes. So they are trying to replace the tomatoes with ketchup by saying that this ketchup is so much like tomatoes. Okay. It's a tomato ketchup that is the closest to tomatoes. It doesn't have a lot of additions or a lot of mixtures into it. Now, so what is the message conveyed? This ketchup is as close as real tomatoes. The bottle is shown as if it is cut like tomatoes. What is the purpose of this image? To persuade the viewers to buy the product. Okay, so why has the editor or the designer designed it like this? To persuade the viewers to buy the product. So this is the reason behind why this has been done. Right now, let's try the what and why method with a text. Okay, now let's look at this text. As the source of this account is a magazine known for blatant lies, the authenticity of the account cannot be taken for granted. Okay, what do you think this means? Can one of you tell me on chat? So this is a bigger sentence. So if you want, you can break the sentences into two parts and then try to understand it. No responses yet? Yes. So we yes, Ashwant has replied, we cannot believe that with that particular account. Yes. So it's questioning the authenticity because it says blatant lies. Okay. So what is being said in this text? A doubt about the truth. Okay. Since it says as the source of this account is a magazine. Okay. So this account is taken from a magazine that is known for its blatant lies only. Okay, so they are lying without even being ashamed of it, right? So we know that this magazine is known for such lies. So when you know that this account is from this kind of a source, then obviously you cannot trust the authenticity of it, right? So a doubt about the truth or validity of something. And why is this being present? To question or challenge the truth about the account. Okay, so for this account, since this account is taken from this source, from this magazine, which is known for lies, you cannot trust its authenticity. Okay, so you can't take it. This authenticity cannot be taken for granted. There is a good chance that it is false. So it is, the author is trying to question or challenge the truth about the account. Okay, so this is how you will understand what is being said and why it is said in terms of, when in a pictorial representation, what the picture is saying and why it is being said. Okay, in terms of a text, what is the text saying and why is it being said? This is your what and why method. So once you get used to solving every question using this method, it'll make things very easy for you when you solve an RC passage. So one of you had asked, what is an RC passage? RC is reading comprehension. So in your reading section, you will have 3 passages. These 3 passages are called reading comprehension passages because you read the passage, you comprehend the information, and then you answer the question, right? Okay. So why is the what and why method important? Because this will help you understand the main idea of what is being said and the reason behind why it is being said or why the author is saying so. Okay, and once you understand the what and why, making notes would become way easier and you can quickly summarize the paragraph in 1 or 2 lines. Okay, so by noting down the what and why for each paragraph, you can simply identify the parts of the passage that have a particular information. Okay, so what you will do is you will read a paragraph and understand what is being said, why it is being said. Okay, so if your passage has 4 paragraphs, you do the what and why for each paragraph individually. Okay, so that when you look at the questions, you can easily locate to which part of it is from and find the answer. This will make your whole process quicker. Okay, So this what and why method also has to be done within the 10 minutes that is allotted for reading the passage, which is why 7 minutes to quickly read through it, 3 minutes to figure out the what and why for each of the paragraphs. Okay. Now, this is about understanding the passage. Now coming to reading and understanding the passage, now coming to answering the question. Okay. So how do you answer the question? First, you understand the task direction. Is it a multiple choice question? Is it a sentence completion question? Is it a match the right answer question? Okay. And if even in those questions, how many answers do you have to pick? If you have to pick one right answer, if you have to pick two right answers, or in your sentence completion, should you use 2 words to fill it, 1 word, not more than 2 or 3 words, whatever has been mentioned, please read that very, very carefully and understand it. Okay. Then you eliminate the incorrect options. Okay. Sometimes 2 answers might look right to you out of the 3 options given, right? In this case, you try to eliminate the incorrect option by looking at the information that is either missing or incorrect. So try to look very, very carefully and start eliminating the wrong options, and you will be left with the correct option, right? And then you can verify if that correct option is your actual right answer. Okay. Now, things that you should not do when you are in the reading section. So as soon as you arrive at the reading section, never look at the questions first. Okay. Because you'll only end up losing time. Because if you read the question and then you start searching for the answer, then you read the question, then you start searching for the answer, this will take up a lot of time. Rather, spend the first 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to read your passage, figure out the what and why. So in your first 10 minutes, you have finished this part. Now you are prepared to look at the question and answer them, right? Now, once you have read the passage, immediately go to those questions. Okay. In your paper-based test, you might be able to go back to the previous passage, but it does not make sense because you will lose focus and forget what you have learned from the passage. Right? So do not take a break between your passage and its question. You read a passage, immediately answer it. Okay. Now, read each paragraph and understand in one line why the passage is written and what is said. So again, what and why method. Okay. Understand how the author feels. What is the tone? What is the opinion? What is the feeling behind the passage? Okay. If you come across some new words, don't worry, don't get tensed. Try to understand the meaning from the context. So read the sentence and make out that, this is going to be the meaning of this word. Okay. It's okay because even if you don't know the meaning, you will still be able to answer most of the questions. Okay. So in the end, understand the overall what and why of each of the paragraphs and of the overall passage. Okay. Now, like I mentioned earlier, remember to treat every passage like a story. Okay. See where it begins, what happens next, and how it ends. Okay. That way you will be able to understand and remember the information better. Okay. Next, follow the story. Understand the sequence of events of what led to what happening, what led to what happening, and what happened finally. Okay. Do not ignore headers and taglines. Okay. Now let's look at one of the passages to apply this strategy. Okay. So let's read this passage. Okay. So I'm going to read it for you. For a few weeks in, okay. So what did I do right now? I just jumped to this, which is something you should not do. You have to read the heading. You have to read the tagline, then come to the passage. Okay. Right. So South Pole Adventurer. In the race to the South Pole, there was a Japanese team attempting to be first, led by heroic explorer Nobu Shirase. Okay. So what is it? The story is going to be about a South Pole adventurer. And there is a race to the South Pole where there is a Japanese team that is attempting. And this Japanese team is led by an explorer called Nobu Shirase. Okay. So when you note down in shorthand, Japan, Nobu Shirase, you can just write NS. Okay. So you know that this is a Japanese called Nobu Shirase. And they are going to the South Pole. Now, for a few weeks in January 1912. Okay. So this is an important date that you might want to note. And then there's something about Antarctica, because South Pole, Antarctica. So everyone was going to Antarctica. So for a few weeks in January, Antarctica was full of explorers. So there was another person, Norwegian Roald Amundsen, who had reached the South Pole on 14th December. Okay, they haven't mentioned the year, which means it should have been the previous year. Okay, because this talks about January 1912 and this is about 14th December. Okay, so we are just trying to interpret and fill between the lines, think between the lines that it should have been this, but we will not confirm it until we look further. Okay, on 14th December, I was speeding back to the coast. On 17th January, Robert Scott. So this is one person. So you write NRA, another person RS. Okay, and the men of British. Okay, so this is a British Antarctic expedition. Okay, they had also arrived to the pole to find that they have been just beaten to it. So this was the first person to arrive. This was the second person to arrive. Just then a third person arrived, this Japanese person about whom this story is. Okay. However, his part is one of the greatest adventure stories of the century and is hardly known outside his own country, even by fellow explorers. Yet, as Scott was nearing the pole and with the rest of the world still unaware of Amundsen's triumph, Shirase and his team sailed into Antarctica's Bay of Whales in the smallest ship ever to try its luck in these dangerous waters. Right? So this passage is talking about this person and how he managed to reach the South Pole. And he was the third person to arrive there. First was this person, Norwegian Roald Amundsen, and second was this person. Right? So this is the information. This is the what given in the passage. Okay. So what is the author trying to say in this passage? Can one of you tell me on chat? Is it A, B, or C? Okay. So the answer is that no one knew that there was a third Antarctic expedition. See, when you look at the passage, it says that a third man arrived who nobody knew about, still unaware. Right? So this is one. So this is also the right information. This is also the right information, but this is the most relevant information. Okay. But so option B that most of you have chosen, this is only in the title. But when you come to the paragraph, it is talking mainly about this. And the question here says, what is the author saying in the paragraph, not in the title, right? So make sure you read the question carefully and answer accordingly. Now, why has the author written this paragraph? So what is there in this paragraph that the author wants to say? Can one of you respond? A. Okay, right. So to introduce Nobu Shirase. Right. Now moving on to the next paragraph. Okay. Since boyhood, Shirase had dreamed of becoming a polar explorer. Like Amundsen, he initially set his sights on the North Pole. But after the American Robert Peary claimed to have reached it in 1909, both men hastily altered their plans. Instead, they would aim for the last big prize, the South Pole. So since the North Pole had already been done, they all turned their eyes to the South Pole. Now, in January 1910, Shirase put his plans before the Japanese government officials, promising to raise the flag at the South Pole within 3 years. For many of them, the question wasn't, could he do it? But why would it be worth doing? Okay, so mostly people did not support him. Okay, 15 years earlier, the International Geographical Congress had said that at the last unknown continent, the Antarctic offered the chance to add to knowledge in almost every branch of science. So, like the British, Shirase presented his expedition as a search for knowledge, saying he would bring back fossils, make meteorological measurements, and explore unknown parts of the continent. Okay, so what is the author saying in this paragraph? Can one of you quickly tell me? Okay. Shirase sought the help of Japanese government. Okay. There is a mention about him going to the South Pole because he couldn't go to the North Pole, but this is just the beginning of the passage, right? And it is Shirase, this is completely wrong since Shirase was not clear. It's not that he was not clear. It was that people were not clear that why would it be worth going. So, but what did Shirase do in this paragraph? He sought the help of the Japanese government he approached them to help him go down to the South Pole. Now, why has the author written this paragraph? Yes, to show how he made his proposal. Yes, most of you had answered this right. So to show that Shirase had made his proposal. Okay. It's not about his dream. He just wanted to go to the South Pole, but he North Pole first. But since that was done, he moved to the South Pole. And they're not really talking about the mentality of the government. Obviously, the government will question, but he made his way. So this is about more of his proposal and what he agreed on bringing back. Let's read the next paragraph. Okay, so the response from the government was cool, however, and Shirase struggled to raise funds. Fortunately, a few months later, Japan's former Prime Minister, Shigenobu Okuma, came to Shirase's rescue. With Okuma's backing, Shirase got together just enough money to buy and equip a small ship. He eventually acquired a scientist too, called Terutaro Takeda. At the end of November 1910, his ship, the Kainan Maru, finally left Tokyo with 27 men and 28 Siberian dogs on board. Before leaving, Shirase confidently outlined his plans to the media. He would sail to New Zealand, then reach Antarctica in February during the southern summer, and then proceed to the pole the following spring. This was not to be, however. Bad weather delayed the expedition and they didn't reach New Zealand until 8th February. Okay, they were supposed to reach Antarctica in February, but they didn't even reach New Zealand until 8th February. Amundsen and Scott had already been in Antarctica for a month preparing for winter. Okay, so these two people had already reached and had already been in Antarctica. So they've already reached Antarctica and they were preparing for the winter, right? Now, what is the author saying in this passage? Right. So good job, Ankita Singh. She's answered it right. Most of you answered C, but it is B. Shirase was late in starting his expedition and hence was further delayed in reaching Antarctica, right? And now, why has the author written this paragraph? To talk about the mentality of the government. Okay, right. So now what was the passage about? So the entire passage is about answers, please. Well done, Urvi. Yes, Shirase's preparation for his Anta. So this whole passage about, so this means this is talking about the title right now. Okay, so the title and the main idea in the entire passage put together. Okay, and why has the author written this passage? Okay, so well done, Neeraj. Right, to study the problems involved in Antarctic expedition. Okay, right. So let's summarize this passage. So this passage is about Nobu Shirase, a Japanese explorer who landed in Antarctica in 1912. He sought the help of the Japanese government to realize his dream. So this is about passage A, this is about passage B, this is about passage C. Okay, Shirase faced a lot of difficulty before and during his voyage. Right. Now let's, so with this, we come to the end of our session. We're going to quickly recap and go through all the important pointers that you need to remember to master your IELTS reading section. Right. So your reading section will have 3 passages. Each passage will be about 800 words long. You will have 40 questions, 13, 14, and 13. There are 3 broad question types in the IELTS reading test. You will have multiple choice questions, matching questions, and short answer questions. And you are tested on your ability to read academic level passages and comprehend the gist of a text, understand relationship between passage and accompanying non-textual data. You capture details and understand the logic between the two. Recognize the writer's opinions and views. Okay. Now, with this, we come to the end of our reading section. Now, before we move on, I'm just going to quickly give you a gist of what we offer at Galvanize. Okay? So we have video lessons. You will have a lot of about 450 plus practice questions, and you will receive personalized feedback. I'll quickly show you how this works. So once you enroll with us, we will give you a day-to-day study plan, right? On day 1, you will have so many things to learn about. Day 2, so it'll be a day-to-day study plan that will be given to you based on the plan that you choose. 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, right? So we will personalize the plan according to you. Now, once you have the study plan, you will have a video explanation on various topics, after which you will have some questions to answer. Once you answer these questions, so you will have different kinds of questions based on how your test will be. And for your speaking session, you will, the speaking session is the best part because you will have a live interaction with one of our examiners, one of our expert examiners for that matter. And they will guide you, they will take an actual speaking test with you, after which they will give you a feedback on what your mistakes are, what your strengths are, and how you can improve. Okay, so once this is done, all your scores, you will be able to gauge all your scores for each of the tests that you take. And you will also receive personalized feedback for everything, where your strengths and weaknesses and your areas of improvement will be pointed out. Okay, and if you have any doubts, you can always get in touch with us with the Ask Your Expert feature, where you ask your doubt and you will receive answers or doubt clearances from our expert examiners. Okay, now this is the learning data of few of our students. So a student who enrolled with us in the beginning at the diagnostic test, in reading, this student scored only 7 points, but in the actual IELTS, it ended up getting 9 points. Same way in the listening section, it started from 7.5 and improved to 8. Speaking remained almost the same, but writing 6.5 to 8. So overall, we were able to see that from 7.5, the student was able to raise their score to 8.5. Okay. For this other student, started off with 6.5 and ended with 8. So you can gradually see an increase in the total score. Right. Okay. Now I will hand over the session to Ramya and she'll take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darshana, for the insightful webinar that we had from your end. And here we would, as we are nearing to the end of the session, we would quickly like to understand how would you like to prepare. And as I mentioned earlier, that we do have IELTS course where today's attendees will be eligible for the IELTS course at the lowest course fee out there. And we have shared the link in the chat box out there, and you could just click on the link and you can make use of this offer that is there. And I see a lot of students are juggling between self-prep, in-person live class and live online classes. So I'm pretty sure Galvanize courses would be really great help to you out there. And before we dive into the Q&A session, as I mentioned earlier, quickly, I've kept on saying Galvanize does have free mobile applications, but in case you're looking for something with more details, here are our courses. And as I said, IELTS is available at the lowest price out there, so make the best use. And this also profile evaluation is something which is really great, because this tells us where do you stand right now with your current profile, and in case there are any shortcomings in your profile, our experts will guide you as to what are the steps that you can take to make your profile very strong enough to get into your dream university out there. So please make use of this profile evaluation. It's completely free, though it's a part of the course that comes in the admission counseling part, but for attendees we are giving it as free. So do fill in the profile evaluation form, get in touch with our expert, understand. You can also get all your doubts clear about the IELTS exam, GRE, TOEFL, whichever exam you're planning to take, and also understand where do you stand today with your profile out there. So now we are open to the Q&A session. And so Darshana, would you like to take some questions? As we have last few minutes with us, we can take up the questions.
Sure, yes.
So we have a student who's targeting for fall 24, and the student is asking, when can you apply for IELTS?
Okay. So if you are considering applying in fall 24, then I think you should start preparing for your IELTS now and give your exam at least towards the end of the year or a little earlier, based on when the university starts giving out forms for the particular university that you are applying. Right? So make sure your scores are out before the date that the university is giving out the forms.
So we
Prepare
have
accordingly.
Sorry. So we have next question from Neeraj. What is the effective and the best method to quickly take helpful notes while preparing for reading passage?
The what and why method, obviously. We just saw it, right? So you understand what is given in the passage and understand why it is given. Quickly write notes in short form. You don't need to write entire sentences. You can just write, short forms for you to understand, because it's only you that has to understand the notes. You cannot just write it like, in alphabets or maybe just the initials or your texting language or whatever, so that you are able to understand. But when you are writing your answer in your answer sheet, make sure it is the exact correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation is used for your exams, with respect to the IELTS standard. So read the passage and make sure your spellings are right. You have used the right punctuation and right grammar. Do not make a mistake in your final answer, but in your notes, as far as you are able to understand it, that's enough.
Thank you. We have next question from Urvi. Should we read the passage first or question first, so that while going through the passage, we can immediately mark it?
Read the passage first. Do not read the question, because you're going to waste a lot of time trying to search for the answers. But if you read the passage, skim through the passage. You don't have to read every word in the passage. Quickly skim through the passage within the first 5 to 7 minutes, so you know what is present where, since you have also made note of your what and why for each of the passage. Now, when you look at the question, you know where you have to locate it. So exactly go to that point, locate it, and fill in your answer. This is really time saving. Try it, and you should get back to us.
We have next question from Neeraj. How much maximum time should be given for fully reading and understanding the passage, and average time required to answer the corresponding question?
Okay, so for reading the passage, somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes. For answering each question, less than 1 minute, because you have 20 minutes for one passage, because the entire time is 60 minutes, right? 60 minutes, 3 passages, which means 20 minutes for each paragraph, each passage, sorry. So if you take 7 minutes to read and understand the passage, you have 13 minutes for one question each. But if you are not so quick at reading yet and you need to practice, please practice and try to get to 7 minutes. The maximum you can drag with your what and why is 10 minutes. And then you will have to answer the questions in less than 1 minute each. But if you do 7 minutes, then you are left with 7 plus 13, 20 minutes exactly.
In the IELTS CBT, can I move around to different passages at any time? Means moving from one passage to other?
No. No.
And can I spend more than 20 minutes for one passage?
No. If you're going to spend more than 20 minutes on one passage, you are obviously going to miss out on the next passage, because 60 minutes is the maximum time. In your computer-based test, it will get auto-submitted, and you will not be able to, get more time. Either ways, even in your paper-based test, you will not get more time. So 60 minutes is the allotted time. So if you're going to spend more than 20 minutes on one passage, you're going to lose out time for the next passage, which is a big loss for you, right? So try to read your passage between 5 to 7 minutes, maximum 10 minutes, and then try to answer your questions in less than 1 minute each.
We have
cannot
one last.
navigate.
Sorry. So we have one last question. Which one is better to take, either IELTS CBT or IELTS paper-based test? And what are the respective advantages and disadvantages of the two models?
Okay, so this is completely a personal choice of whatever platform you are more comfortable with. For people who are very familiar and very comfortable with using a computer, I would generally advise you to take the computer-based test. But if you are from a region where you're not very tech savvy, then I suggest you take the paper-based. But whatever you do, make sure that you are comfortable with that medium of usage of the device or the paper, right? And also make sure to check with your university first. If your university accepts only computer-based tests, then automatically you have to use the computer-based test. So this you need to check. That's it.
When we get IELTS result after we have given the paper-based test?
They will tell you on the date of your exam. They will give you the date on which you will have the results displayed. Usually, I think it is between 10 to 12 days or 2 weeks period. But the exact date will be given to you on the day you take the test. So you should ask at the exam center when you are giving the test.
So, I think that's it from questions and Darshana.
Right.
So with this,
Okay.
we have come to the end of the session. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
today. And also thank you to the students who have been participating in this session by providing the answers, by asking us questions. This was really amazing. But in case you have more questions and you would like to speak to our experts, please fill in the profile evaluation form so that we can get in touch with you and get all your answers cleared out there. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. Also, in case you want to take a look at this webinar again, do you want to take a recap of this, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, because you will find all the previous webinars that were there. And in case you would like to know what are the upcoming sessions that we have at Galvanize Global Education for you, please join our WhatsApp community. And I'm sharing both the links in the chat box so that you can make the best use of this. And we would be really excited and thrilled and happy to help you achieve in your dream score, destination, university out there. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today.